All right, final chat. Make it a good one there, Token Allen.
Okay, I got a good one for you. Andrew Breitbart's birthday was this week, and Bob Loblaw wants to know, what do you think he would say to you about current events if he was still alive?
You know what? I posted something about that on Instagram. We were just talking about this yesterday. Yeah. You asked me if I think you asked me if I knew Andrew.
Yeah, because I obviously saw The Sign, and Righteous Indignation was one of the first books that I read from a conservative author.
Right. What did you think of the book?
I loved it.
Yeah. Pretty. I mean, this is before the cancel culture thing or social justice warrior was a term, but Andrew kind of knew how to identify the leftist culture.
Well, and I related a lot to him as when he was young.
Right.
And he kind of explains the progression of just himself and just going from a kid with a certain forced ideology to starting to see a different picture. And he really does explain it beautifully all the way to working for the Huffington Post. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, everything that he put in there it's a really good read for anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked about this before, but not only did I know Andrew, I mean, Andrew was the first person to RSVP at my wedding.
That's what you said. Yeah, it was a crazy answer I got.
He was looking into property in Western Michigan.
Oh, really?
Because he said this is the first place for my kids for summer. There are lakes in California, but not. I didn't know what this was, and they put down their phone. It's like this wonderland. Like he loved it, and I told him he was going to love it, and he loved the people there in Western Michigan. But I will tell you this: I wouldn't be doing any of this if not for Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart was an accidental. It was just an incidental lifeline. What happened was. I think at this point, I had been doing acting and stand-up since I had been very young. And I just done some films, and I didn't get paid a whole lot. And at this point, there wasn't really a lot of work. We were after pilot season, and my parents said, you better get a job then at this point. And I didn't want to wait tables. And I said, look, here's what I'm going to do. I have enough money from the last thing that I filmed. I'm going to do YouTube now, and I'm going to treat it like a full-time job. Do it for 6 months. I have enough runway for 6 months. And it turned out that then I didn't need it after 3 months. I knew that I could do it. And I messaged people. This is back when YouTube had direct messages. I would message people. There were no conservative channels. But I would find channels that were like pro-firearm channels, or I would find channels that were former military channels and say like, hey, you might like my content. And I got to 10,000 subscribers. So I was treating it like a full-time job because I realized that I didn't play well with others in the entertainment industry. I've told this story. I was on a show called Greek where we got into it over South Park, and the guy did not like me, the director.
The ABC Family Show?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah, what's funny is I had a character, if you go on IMDb, called Jace. It was supposed to have a multi-episode arc, and it could have just been named Drunken Frat Guy Number 2,
right?
Because they called and complained immediately afterwards. And I know it was because of a very specific conversation we had about South Park and liberals, because the guy was a fan of South Park, and I thought he was one of us. He wasn't.
No.
The irony was lost on him.
Oops.
Yeah, he doesn't get South Park.
No, he doesn't get South Park. Yeah. And he thought I didn't get South Park, and that turned into something even more hostile.
Oh, he's not going to like Trey's views.
No, he is not. So what happened was I heard Andrew Breitbart on Dennis Miller's show, and I was listening. This was back before really podcasts. I would tune in to I knew there was a station in Texas because I had done stand-up at the Cap City Comedy Club. And so I knew that Dennis Miller was on the station, so I would listen to Dennis Miller almost every day, his radio show, and I heard Andrew Breitbart on the show. And this was before it was Breitbart, the trademark. It was, he couldn't get the website Breitbart or BigHollywood.com. The reason his name was included was because he wanted to get BigHollywood.com. Andrew's first project, and he was talking about this on Dennis Miller's show, was Big Hollywood. He had to get the URL breitbart.bighollywood.com because Big Hollywood was already owned and someone was sitting on it. And it was a place for conservatives in Hollywood to speak. And then it kind of turned into bloggers who were conservative to write about Hollywood. But the first writers there, obviously I remember Ben Shapiro, there was a guy named Gary Eaton, John Nolte. There were only a handful, Adam Baldwin. And I heard Andrew Breitbart on Dennis Miller's show, and it was just for me, kind of like you with his book. I said, this guy, well, that's what he's saying, that's what I am. And I had not really heard many people like that before.
Right.
And so I found his info and I called him, and he treated me like I was the senior booker for Bill O'Reilly. He spoke with me for 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
He hung up, and then I sent him a stand-up reel, and then he called back, and he said, well, I know, I see it, and I understand what you're doing is kind of touchy, kind of cholo voice. I said, no, Andrew, I was just showing you that I'm a stand-up comic. That's not what, I don't want to post this to the website. He's like, well, I already posted it.
Okay.
And I said, no, I wanted to write for the site. And then I will say I kind of forced his hand. I started doing these YouTube videos. And what I just did was I said to the editor there, I said, look, hey, here's what I'm going to do. At the end of the YouTube video, I'm going to put Big Hollywood up there as a credit. And well, that way I kind of promote you, you kind of promote me. And, and they were like, you don't have to do it. Like, I already did it, so post the video. And so it sort of forced them to support me. But it became popular. And then at that point, Michelle Malkin started posting things at Hot Air. And because of that, I had enough, that back then, 15,000 views on YouTube was a ton.
Yeah.
And then that took me to a company, PJTV, where I actually met my wife. And that took me to Fox News for 4.5 years. And I never actually worked for or with Andrew. I just worked alongside him. I was always I would just contribute whenever I felt like it. It was an open door. We were friends. We were colleagues, and he was incredibly supportive. And I remember him having a conversation one time with me about doing my due diligence before storming the castle. And he really understood what leftism was because he lived in that world. He was from Los Angeles. So he had his finger to the pulse of it, and he didn't hate anybody. That was also something, too. People talk about happy warrior. I watched Andrew, and look, Andrew obviously made some mistakes, and him and I had our differences, but Andrew really believed in what he did. And Andrew changed the media landscape forever. I'm not talking about Breitbart, the trademark. I'm talking about Andrew Breitbart, the man.
Yeah.
And it was an uphill struggle. It was an uphill struggle. Not a lot of people. He was persona non grata there at Fox News when Bill O'Reilly screwed the pooch at one point. Bill O'Reilly edited the Shirley Sherrod tape out of context, and then when she got fired, blamed Andrew Breitbart. But Andrew Breitbart uploaded the Shirley Sherrod tape where she said something racist in the tape, and people clapped. And then later on, she said, I learned that it was racist and that it shouldn't be about black versus white. So Andrew Breitbart wrote this article. This is and let me know if this is making sense here, but this is something that was a really rough period in Andrew Breitbart's life. And it really went a long way. This was formative for me to see someone redeem himself between these years leading up to Anthony Weiner. So he did the Acorn stuff. He won some lawsuits. He had built his website up. He became persona non grata, and I watched everyone turn their back on him, including people who had gotten their jobs at Fox News because of Andrew Breitbart. And I got my job indirectly as a contributor because of Andrew Breitbart, because he put my name in, okay? So I owe him a lot. And a lot of other people owed him a lot. They turned their backs on him. And that, for me, made me kind of, okay, mark some folks. All right, I understand it. You wouldn't have what you have without Andrew Breitbart. And now you threw him under the bus for optics. You didn't even think he was wrong. Here's what happened. Andrew Breitbart had a video. I remember Shirley Sherrod. You might be able to find it. She was a black lady, head of some kind of agricultural department. This is years ago. So she was giving a speech to the NAACP. Andrew Breitbart uploaded this post to, I think this was Big Government at this point, biggovernment.com. And again, it was before it was Breitbart. It was just biggovernment.com. And it's her saying, I did not help the white farmer as much as I would help the black farmer. And the NAACP audience clapped and goes, hey! And Andrew Breitbart in the post at Big Government, in this post, said now, if you fast forward to whatever it is, 27 minutes in, she does talk about how she learned the lesson that it wasn't about white versus black. It was about helping those in need, and her humanity did eventually get the best of her. But that doesn't change the audience reaction when she said something racist.
Right.
His focus was the NAACP clapping at racism before they hear the redemption.
Yeah.
It'd be like people clapping at Ebenezer Scrooge saying, are there no prisons? Are there no poorhouses? Before you watch the third act. Andrew Breitbart was very clear about that. Bill O'Reilly runs the video on his show. One of his editors cuts it just at that part, no context, and says, and Shirley Sherrod basically saying that she's a racist. I don't know why she's still allowed to have a job. She gets fired because of the outrage.
Unbelievable.
And then liberals say, why are you taking it out of context? Look, she said that her humanity got the best of her and it wasn't about racism. And Bill O'Reilly goes on air, and a lot of people at Fox News, and they go, this kind of gotcha journalism is just as disgusting to us from the right as when the left does it. And Andrew Breitbart, you should know better. He did know better. He posted it. These people weren't willing to take responsibility for the fact that they wanted a sexier story, and they took the quote out of context. And so he became persona non grata. He wasn't on Fox News for years.
Yeah.
And people who had jobs because of him didn't throw out a lifeline, didn't support him. And I remember he was going through a pretty rough grind because he knew he was right, and he knew that they knew he was right. And at that point, what happened? Everyone would use it as a verb. They would say, oh, Breitbart. It was a lie. It was a lie. But they'd say, oh, Breitbart, gotcha journalism, Breitbart. To the point where when Anthony Weiner, this happened, right? All these, I think it was a couple of years. Then the Anthony Weiner saga happens. Andrew Breitbart, at this point, says, I have these naked pictures from Anthony Weiner, right? These stories have been going out. What does the media do? The media goes, oh, yeah, you're going to believe this, Anthony Weiner because they were planning on him running for office. They said it was false. They said the story wasn't true. Andrew Breitbart, and even Alec Baldwin said this has a whiff of Breitbart about it. I remember him tweeting that. So he tried to turn it into a verb to discredit Andrew, and there were complicit people at Fox News on the right, to the point where Andrew said, look, I have the pictures from Anthony. I have the pictures from Anthony Weiner. I'd rather not release them as to not destroy his family publicly. But you have to stop raking my name through the mud. I remember him saying that, and they kept saying lies, lies, lies. Anthony Weiner was holding a press conference. I think it was at the Omni. I don't remember. It was there. It was on C-SPAN. And he was about to go out there publicly with all of his sycophants in the press, just like you see today, no accountability, and say, this is a smear campaign from Andrew Breitbart. And everyone would go, of course, Breitbart, and dismiss it. These pieces were already pre-written and approved. This is what was going to happen. And someone yelled out through the hallways, Andrew Breitbart's in the building. You can read about it. It is bone-chilling. And he went up on that podium and said, I have the pictures. And if immediately Anthony Weiner does not apologize and acknowledge the smear campaign and the attacks on my character, I will release them. I would rather not release them. And Anthony Weiner crumpled up his script and went out and admitted fault and apologized.
You know what I would be accused of if I released this photo? I'm doing this to save his family, okay? And if this guy wants to start fighting with me again, I have this photo. But I absolutely do. I'm not doing this for nefarious purposes. I'd like an apology from him for allowing for his political protectors, this was his strategy, was to blame me for hacking. Oh, don't worry, Breitbart's our regular whipping boy. We can accuse him of anything, and the press will not hold those journalists to account no matter what they say. And so I'm here for some vindication.
But I watched Andrew Breitbart have all of his friends turn their back, not all of them, but a lot of them, turn their backs on him for political expediency and for optics. And that was important for me to watch. It was important for me to see that triumph, because then everyone wanted to be Andrew's friend, and that came with a whole bunch of other problems sometimes where, your star rises too quickly, and I wish that he would have been able to take care of himself better. But Andrew Breitbart was someone who, it's not just something I put on my resume, because I've never put it on my resume. He was a man who had a really significant impact on my life, and he's had a more significant impact on all of your lives. Thanks for ruining the moment.
I know, I totally ruined it.
He's had more of a significant impact on everyone's lives out there than you probably even know. And so I would recommend you read his book, Righteous Indignation, if you can. And what I love about him is he's not perfect. He was a character. He's lost in some ways trying to do the right thing, and loved people, really loved people, and did a lot of good. So Andrew, I miss him, and what do you think about today? Listen, I think you could probably guess. It wouldn't be that hard. Andrew was an open book. What do you think Andrew Breitbart lived to burn down the media establishment. I do think that Andrew Breitbart, if he were alive, would be in a very different situation with big tech. I think that Andrew Breitbart would be one of the few people out there who would actually be filing lawsuits like we are and actually trying to hold politicians accountable rather than lip service and trying to maintain their own platforms. I think Andrew Breitbart probably would have been a lot more. And I would like to think, I talk about this sometimes, I'd like to think that he'd be proud of what I built, but I don't know. You never know. Doesn't matter. There's still a lot of things that he did right that I want to emulate, and even some things that I don't want to emulate. But that was formative for me. Seeing him be shit on, be betrayed, people turn their backs on him, and seeing him win. Because in real life, the good guy doesn't always get ahead, doesn't always win. And he did. So, means a lot. I don't know. We'll see what comes around next week. I don't know what we're talking about. Now I'm emotional. I get out emotional with this gooey show of emotion. See you next week. Bye.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.